Noah Carter hadn't planned on starting over at 36, but life had a way of forcing you into roles you never thought you'd play. 3 years ago, he had a promising career as a graphic designer, a small apartment in the city, and a wife who laughed at all his corny jokes. Now, it was just him and his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. The divorce had been brutal, not because they hated each other, but because tragedy had changed them. His wife, unable to cope with their son's passing, had drifted away into a life Noah couldn't follow. He was left with full custody of Lily and a heart that didn't quite know how to beat the same way again. Tonight was his first night cleaning offices in the city's tallest glass tower, job he never imagined himself doing. But bills didn't care about pride. Neither did Lily's school tuition or the grocery list taped to their fridge. He rode the service elevator up to the 30th floor, the top floor where the CEO's office sat like the crown of the building. Everything was silent except for the faint hum of the city far below. When he opened the double glass doors, Noah froze. The office wasn't just clean, it was intimidatingly perfect. A mahogany desk polished to a mirror finish, shelves lined with rare books, and a flaunted ceiling window that made the city look like a lit-up map. He didn't know much about the CEO, Emma Sinclair, other than she was young, fiercely intelligent, and rumored to be colder than the marble floor in the lobby. The kind of person whose shoes didn't squeak when she walked, because even sound respected her authority. Noah kept his head down, dusting, wiping, and emptying trash bins. But as he moved around the space, he noticed little things. A framed photo of a golden retriever, a ceramic mug with a chip in the handle, and a half-finished notebook left open on the desk. The handwriting was neat but rushed, as if written in moments of stolen time. He wasn't trying to pry, but the page caught his eye. "I don't know if I'm doing this right. Leading people, keeping up the image. I just wish Dad was here." Noah quickly looked away, guilt pinching his chest. He finished his work and packed up, making sure everything was exactly where he'd found it. But as he was leaving, a thought lingered, strange and unwelcome. Emma Sinclair might be the most powerful woman in the building, but maybe she was just as lonely as he was. He didn't know it yet. But before long, he'd leave something behind in this office, a simple letter that would change both their lives in ways neither of them could have predicted. If you're enjoying the start of this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more heartfelt stories, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Noah fell into a rhythm quickly. Every evening after tucking Lily into bed, he'd grab his worn work jacket, kiss her forehead, and head to the train. The 30th floor became a place he knew better than his own living room. Every smudge on the glass, every shadow that stretched across the carpet when the city lights flickered outside. Emma's office never changed much. The same books in perfect order, the same desk lamp left on, casting a small island of light in an otherwise dark room. The same coffee mug with its chipped handle, still sitting on the corner of the desk as if it had a permanent spot there. But every now and then, Noah would catch something new. Once it was a folder left open with blueprints of a project labeled Sinclair Foundation, Children's Center. Another time, a crumpled napkin with a few lines of what looked like a speech. He never read more than a glimpse. It wasn't his place, but it made him wonder. The truth was, Noah had a quiet respect for people who worked hard and still cared about something bigger than themselves. He could tell Emma Sinclair wasn't just running a company to make money. She was building something she hoped would outlast her. Still, their worlds couldn't have been more different. She arrived each morning in sleek black cars. He arrived each night on a half-empty train with janitorial supplies in a plastic caddy. She probably didn't even know he existed. But one Friday night, something shifted as he was dusting the bookshelf. Noah heard the sound of heels clicking down the hallway, sharp, fast, impatient. His stomach tightened. The cleaning crew almost never saw the executives. By the time they arrived, the floor was empty. The glass doors opened, and there she was. Emma Sinclair looked exactly like the headlines described. Polished, controlled, the kind of presence that filled the room, even when she didn't say a word. She was on her phone, speaking in clipped sentences, and didn't seem to notice him right away. When she finally glanced up, her expression barely changed, but her eyes flicked over him briefly before she moved past. "Don't move the folders. On my desk," she said without looking back. "Yes, ma'am," Noah replied quietly. He kept working, but he could feel her presence behind him as she paced. phone pressed to her ear. The conversation sounded tense, something about deadlines, numbers, and someone not delivering. When she finally ended the call, there was a long silence. He thought she'd leave, but instead, she stood by the window, staring out over the city. "You always work this late?" she asked suddenly, her voice softer than before. "Yeah," Noah said. "Well, night shift." She nodded once, almost absently. "Must be quiet here after hours." "It is," he said. "Sometimes, that's the best part." It wasn't much of a conversation, but it was the first time their lives had intersected in more than just shared space. As Noah left that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that, for the briefest moment, Emma Sinclair had stepped down from her unreachable tower, and he was starting to wonder if maybe he'd been wrong about how far apart their worlds really were. The next week, the quiet routine returned, at least for a while. Noah came in each night, moving silently through the office like a shadow. Emma didn't show up again during his shift, and part of him wondered if that brief exchange by the window had been a one-time thing, an accidental crack in the armor of a woman who otherwise kept her life sealed. Then, on a rainy Tuesday night, he noticed something out of place. On Emma's desk sat a thick navy blue folder, the kind you'd expect to hold contracts or financial reports. But it wasn't closed. A single sheet of paper was sticking out at an odd angle, the ink smudged as if water had touched it. He told himself not to look, but his eyes betrayed him. The first line read, "Proposal for expansion, Sinclair Foundation Children's Center." Second location beneath it were bullet points: funding goals, architectural sketches, lists of sponsors, and then, scrawled in the margin in a different pen, "Dad would have been proud, but would he think I'm doing enough?" Noah's hand froze on the edge of the desk. It was such a personal thing to leave out in the open. For a moment, he felt like an intruder in someone's private thoughts. He carefully set the paper back where it was and continued cleaning. But the words lingered in his mind. He thought about Lily, how much he wished his son could have known her, how often he wondered if he was doing enough for her despite the circumstances. By the time he finished for the night, the rain outside had turned into a steady downpour. As he walked toward the elevator, something made him stop and glance back at the office one more time. That's when he noticed Emma had left her phone on the windowsill. It was risky, but he knocked softly on the glass door and stepped inside. Again, he didn't want her to lose it, especially if there were urgent calls or personal messages she might need. He picked it up, intending to drop it off at the security desk. But before he could leave, the elevator doors opened and Emma herself walked out, looking tired, her hair slightly damped from the rain. "You're still here?" she asked, sounding almost surprised. "Just about to leave," Noah said, holding up her phone. "You left this." Her eyes softened just enough to be noticeable. "Thanks. That would have been a disaster tomorrow." She took the phone, then hesitated. "You're Noah, right?" He was caught off guard. "Yeah. How did I make it a point to know the names of the people who work in my building?" she said simply. "Even the ones who only come in after dark." He couldn't help but smile faintly at that. "Well, appreciate it." For a second, it seemed like she might say more, but instead she just gave a small nod and walked past him into her office. Noah left feeling strangely unsettled, not in a bad way, but in the way you feel when you know something small has shifted, and you're not sure where it might lead. He didn't know that the next shift would set in motion the moment that would change everything. 2 nights later, the building felt different, not louder, not busier, just heavier somehow, as if the air itself was carrying an unspoken weight. Noah noticed it the moment he stepped onto the 30th floor. Emma's office lights were still on, but she wasn't there. A half-empty coffee cup sat on her desk, a faint ring staining the edge of a document. A silk scarf was draped across the back of her chair, like she'd left in a hurry. He set down his cleaning caddy and got to work, but his mind wasn't on the dusting or vacuuming. Instead, he kept thinking about that folder from the other night, the handwritten note about her father, the quiet way she'd said his name. Something about Emma Sinclair didn't match the image people painted of her. They saw power, control, untouchable authority, but he had seen small signs of someone human, someone who carried things she couldn't always set down. It wasn't his place to interfere, he knew that, but sometimes silence didn't feel like respect, it felt like neglect. By the time he finished the rest of the offices, it was past midnight. He came back to Emma's office to collect his supplies. and his eyes landed on the small notepad she often kept near the edge of her desk. Before he could talk himself out of it, he sat down in her chair. The letter started simply. Ms. Sinclair, you don't know me beyond my name. I cleaned your office at night. I see the books, the projects, the things you're building. I don't know your whole story, but I can tell you care about something bigger than yourself. That's rare. He hesitated. Was this stupid? Maybe. But he kept writing. I lost someone once, my son. It taught me that what we leave behind matters more than what we achieve. You might doubt yourself, but I think your father would be proud. Proud that you're not just running a company or trying to make a difference. For what it's worth, from someone who spends most nights alone in this room after you've gone, I think you're doing enough. More than enough. He didn't sign it, just folded the paper once and tucked it under the edge of her desk lamp, where she'd find it if she noticed. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. By the time he reached the lobby, he wondered if he'd made a huge mistake. It wasn't like they were friends. For all he knew, she'd read the letter and be furious, but part of him hoped, just a little, that she'd understand. The next night, when he returned, something on her desk caught his attention immediately. The letter was gone, and in its place was a small sticky note with just 2 words, "Thank you." The sticky note stayed on Emma's desk for 3 nights. Noah never touched it, never moved. It just noticed it each time he walked in. A small square of yellow paper that somehow made the entire office feel warmer. He didn't expect anything more. The letter had been his way of saying something he thought she needed to hear, with no strings attached. Still, the following Friday, when he arrived on the 30th floor, he was surprised to find Emma there again. She wasn't pacing or on the phone this time. She was sitting at her desk, laptop open, glasses perched low on her nose. And when she looked up and saw him, she didn't just nod, she smiled. "Long night?" Noah asked, careful not to sound like he was prying. "Is there any other kind?" "In this business," she replied, closing her laptop. "I'm guessing it's the same for you." "Different kind of long," he said with a faint grin. "But yeah." There was a pause. She glanced at the trash bin by her desk, and then back at him. "You know, most people don't bother writing letters anymore." Noah froze mid-step. "You read it?" "I did," she said, "and I kept it." Her tone wasn't cold, if anything. It was measured, like she was choosing her words carefully. It was unexpected, but it meant something. He didn't know what to say. "I'm glad." Emma leaned back in her chair. "You have a daughter, right?" The question caught him off guard. "Yeah, Lily, 7 years old." Her expression softened. "She's lucky to have you." He looked down, brushing invisible dust from his gloves. "Some days I wonder if she'd be better off if I had my old career back instead of this." "This is honest work," Emma said simply. "And sometimes, that's what matters most." For a moment, the office was quiet, except for the hum of the city beyond the glass. And then, as if sensing the conversation had reached its natural end, Emma stood, gathering her things. "Have a good night, Noah." "You too, Ms. Sinclair." When she was gone, he realized something had changed, not in any dramatic way, but in small, invisible threads. They weren't just employer and employee anymore. They weren't friends either, not yet, but there was an understanding forming between them, and Noah didn't know it yet. But those threads were about to be pulled in ways that would test them both. If this story has touched your heart so far, take a second to like this video and subscribe so you can follow Noah and Emma's journey to the very end. Your support means the world. It keeps stories like this alive. The following week began quietly enough. Noah returned to his usual routine, dropping Lily off at school in the morning, working odd jobs in the afternoon, and heading into the city at night for his cleaning shift. Emma didn't appear on the 30th floor again, but her presence was always there in the objects she left behind. A pen left uncapped, a coffee mug with fresh lipstick on the rim, a jacket draped over her chair. But on Thursday, everything changed. It was raining hard that night, the kind of rain that blurs the city into streaks of grey and gold. The lobby security guard looked up when Noah came in. "Busy night upstairs," he said. "Board meeting ran late. CEOs still in." Noah nodded, but didn't think much of it until he reached the 30th floor. The moment the elevator doors slid open, he could hear raised voices coming from Emma's office. He froze. "I told you, this expansion will not happen without proper funding." Emma's voice was sharp, clipped. Another voice, male, replied with equal force. "You're pushing this company into a pit, chasing some charity project. You're "Father, don't you dare bring my father into this," she cut in, her tone like ice. "This is my decision." Silence followed, thick and tense. Noah kept to the hallway, pretending to adjust his cart, but he caught the sound of footsteps. Storming toward the elevator, a man in an expensive suit passed him without a glance, jabbing the call button like it had personally offended him. When the doors closed, Noah hesitated. He wasn't supposed to get involved, but when he peeked into the office, Emma was still there, standing by the window with her arms crossed tightly. Her reflection in the glass looked tired. Not the tired of late nights, but the kind that came from fighting for something no one else believed in. "You okay?" Noah asked softly from the doorway. Emma turned, startled. For a moment, it seemed like she might tell him to leave, but then, she just sighed. "It's nothing." "Didn't sound like nothing," he said gently. She walked back to her desk, loosening the knot of her silk scarf. "Some people think my father's legacy is just about profit margins. They don't understand why I'd waste resources on a children's center." "Doesn't sound like a waste to me," Noah said. "Sounds like the kind of thing that might actually matter in 20 years. Emma looked at him, and there was something almost unreadable in her expression. "You talk like you've lost something before." He hesitated, then nodded. "I have." They stood in quiet for a long moment, the rain tapping against the glass. Finally, Emma reached for a folder on her desk and held it out to him. "This is the proposal," she said. "You probably shouldn't be seeing this, but tell me what you think." Noah blinked. "You want my opinion. I want honesty. And something tells me you're not the type to tell me what I want to hear." He took the folder, scanning the pages. Photos of the first center, sketches of playgrounds, plans for classrooms. It wasn't just business, it was personal. "And it was good. You should fight for it," he said finally, "even if it costs you." Emma's lips curved into the faintest smile. "That's the thing about fighting for something. It always costs you." When Noah left that night, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the city lights reflected in the wet pavement like scattered stars. He didn't know why she'd trusted him with something so important, but he knew it meant their worlds were drawing closer. And when worlds get close enough, they start to change each other. The next few nights, Noah couldn't stop thinking about that folder. The drawings of the classrooms, the handwritten notes in the margins, the way Emma's voice had shifted when she talked about the project. It wasn't just work to her, it was something deeply personal. On Monday, he found her still in the office again. This time, she was sitting cross-legged on the couch by the window, papers spread around her like fallen leaves. The city lights framed her in gold and shadow. "Hi," Noah said from the doorway. She glanced up, offering the faintest smile. "You ever notice how some projects feel more like memories than plans?" Noah stepped inside, pushing his cart to the side. "What do you mean?" She tapped the page in front of her. "The first children's center. My father built it when I was a kid. It wasn't fancy, just a small place in a neighborhood most people ignored. He called it the safest place on the street. I spent more time there than in my own house." Her gaze drifted toward the window, and for a moment, she looked far away. "After he passed, I promised I'd keep it running. And now I want to build more, but some of the board think it's sentimental nonsense." "It's not nonsense," Noah said quietly. She looked at him. "You say that like you know." "I do," he admitted. "When my son was alive, we used to go to a small community art space every Saturday. It was the only place where he could just be himself. No pressure, no judgment. Just crayons and paper, and a few hours where the world didn't feel so heavy." Emma's expression softened. "And when you lose a place like that, you feel it. You feel it for the rest of your life," Noah said. Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but weighty. Then Emma reached for a stack of papers and held one out to him. "This is the revised proposal. I'm presenting it again next week. I don't know if it will pass, but I'd like to know if you see anything I missed." Noah sat down across from her, surprised by how natural it felt. They went through the document together, her explaining budget breakdowns and site plans, him offering thoughts from a parent's perspective. At one point, she laughed softly at a comment he made about playground equipment. "You really think kids care more about a good swing set than a library?" "They care about what makes them feel free," Noah replied. "Sometimes that's books. Sometimes it's flying through the air on a swing." By the time they finished, it was close to 1 a.m. Emma gathered the papers into a neat pile, but she didn't seem eager for him to leave. "You know," she said, Most people who work here see me as the company's face. You see me differently. Maybe because I don't work for you," he said with a small smile. "I just take care of your space. And you left a letter that made me think about things I've avoided for years," she added. Noah hesitated, then asked, "Do you regret reading it?" Her answer was immediate. "No. I think it's why I'm still fighting for this." When Noah finally headed to the elevator, he realized something important. Emma wasn't just letting him into her office anymore. She was letting him into her story. And that meant sooner or later, their lives were going to intersect in ways neither of them could fully control. The week of the board meeting arrived like a storm. Cloud Noah could see coming but couldn't avoid. He told himself it wasn't his fight. He was just a janitor, a single dad trying to keep the lights on. But every time he thought about Emma's proposal sitting on that polished desk, about the children's laughter she was fighting for, he felt like he had a stake in it too. On the night before the meeting, Noah found her in the office again. She was wearing a dark blazer, her hair pulled back tighter than usual. The couch was clear of papers this time, but the tension in the room felt heavier than any stack of documents. "Tomorrow's the big day," he said quietly. "Tomorrow decides whether the second center gets built," she replied without looking up from her laptop. "And whether I still have the leverage to lead the company my way." Noah leaned against the doorway. "You've got the plan, you've got the heart. What's missing?" Emma hesitated, then closed the laptop. "Stories, numbers are easy to ignore, but people you can't forget. The board doesn't see the children, they see cost projections." He thought about Lily, about the art center with its scuffed floors and plastic chairs, about the way his son used to hold his crayon so tightly his fingers would turn pink. "What if you gave them a story they couldn't ignore?" he asked. Emma tilted her head. "And where would I get that?" Noah didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked into the office and pulled something from his pocket, a folded piece of paper, worn from being carried too long. He set it on her desk. "What's this?" she asked. "It's the last picture my son ever drew. A house with a swing in the yard and a dog we never had. He drew it at the community art center. I kept it because it was one of the last times I saw him completely happy." Emma's fingers brushed over the paper. "Noah, I'm not saying use it," he said quickly, "but maybe tell them why places like this matter. Tell them that for some kids, it's not just a center. It's the only place they feel safe enough to dream." She didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the drawing as if it were a blueprint to something only she could see. When she finally looked up, there was a quiet determination in her eyes. "Come tomorrow," she said. He blinked. "To the board meeting?" "Yes," she said simply. "They need to hear from someone who doesn't speak in profit margins." Noah hesitated. "I'm not sure exactly what they need to hear," she interrupted. The next morning, Noah put on the only suit he owned, a black jacket that fit a little too snug, and a tie he hadn't worn since the last wedding he attended. Dropped Lily off at school and told her he had an important errand to run. When he arrived at the building, Emma was already waiting by the elevator. But unreadable. She gave him a small nod, and together they stepped into the boardroom. The walls were glass, the table long and polished. 12 people in tailored suits sat around it, eyes flicking between Emma and the stranger she had brought in. "This is Noah Carter," she said without preamble. "He's here to tell you why this center matters." Noah's pulse hammered in his ears, but when he looked at them, at the skeptical faces, the expensive watches, he thought of his son's drawing, and he began to speak. Noah had never spoken in front of a group like this before. The boardroom was too quiet, the air too still, like the whole place was waiting to see him fail. He cleared his throat, gripping the edge of the table to keep his hands steady. "I'm not a business person. I'm not here to talk about profit margins or growth projections. I'm here because I know what these centers can mean to a kid and to a parent." A few of the board members exchanged skeptical glances. He pushed on. "My son Evan was 5 when he started going to a small community art center in our neighborhood. It wasn't fancy. The chairs were scratched, the crayons were half broken, and the roof leaked when it rained. But it was the first place where he felt like the world made room for him." He paused, letting the image settle. "I work nights now, cleaning this building. I don't have much, but I kept every single drawing Evan made there. The last one he drew before we lost him was a picture of a house, a swing set, and a dog we never had. He made it there, in that safe space. That's why places like this matter. Because for some kids, They're the only place where they feel seen, where they feel free. The room was still. Even the man who had argued with Emma earlier leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable. Noah glanced at Emma. She wasn't looking at him, she was looking at the board, her eyes steady, her hands folded on the table. These centers don't just keep kids off the street, Noah continued. They give them a reason to believe there's more to life than what they see at home, or what they don't see. And for parents like me, they give us memories we'd never have otherwise. That's not a line item on a spreadsheet, but it's worth more than anything I've ever earned in dollars. When he finished, the silence stretched for several long seconds. Then Emma spoke. Thank you, Noah. She turned to the board. We've all seen the numbers. You've seen the cost. Now you've heard the value. If we choose not to build this center, we're not just saying no to a project. We're saying no to the chance to change lives in a way that can't be undone. There was quiet murmuring among the members. A woman at the far end of the table spoke first. I move to approve the funding. Another voice chimed in, seconded. The vote was quicker than Noah expected. 7 in favor, 5 against. It passed out. Emma didn't smile or cheer. She just let out a slow breath, as if she'd been holding it for months. She thanked the board and wrapped up the meeting with her usual poise, but when they left the room and the glass doors closed behind them, she turned to him. You didn't just help me win today, she said softly. You helped make sure a lot of kids will have a place to feel safe. That means more than I can say. Noah shrugged lightly, though his throat felt tight. Just told them the truth. As they stepped into the elevator, Emma glanced at him. You should come see it when it's built. Bring Lily. He smiled faintly. I think she'd like that. Neither of them knew it then, but that day had done more than secure the center's future. It had also shifted something unspoken between them, something that would find its voice sooner than either of them expected. The day the community center broke ground was bright and clear, the kind of crisp morning that made the air smell new. Noah stood near the edge of the lot, with Lily's small hand tucked into his, watching the construction crew set up orange cones and survey equipment. Lily's hair was pulled back into a ponytail, and she kept bouncing on her toes. Daddy, is that where the art room will be? She asked, pointing at a chalk outline on the dirt. Yeah, Noah said softly. That's where you're going to paint the biggest picture they've ever seen. Behind them, Emma was moving between groups of people, board members, volunteers, city officials, thanking them, introducing them to each other, making sure no one felt left out. She had a knack for that, the same way she had a knack for noticing things most people missed. When she finally came over, her cheeks were flushed from the cold. Morning, she greeted. I was hoping you'd come. Wouldn't miss it, Noah replied. They stood there together for a moment, watching a small excavator push earth aside. To anyone else, it was just construction noise and movement. To them, it was the start of something that had felt impossible not long ago. Can I tell you something? Emma's voice was quieter now, like she wasn't sure she should say it. Sure. When you first showed up at my house that night, she said, looking at the ground, I thought you were just angry. I thought it was going to be a fight I'd have to diffuse, but you made me listen. And after that, I started seeing things differently, not just about the center, but about you. Noah didn't answer right away. He was too busy remembering that night himself, the rain on her porch, the way she'd looked at him like she wasn't sure whether to trust him, the exhaustion in his own bones. Emma, he said finally, I didn't expect any of this. I just wanted someone to understand what we were living through. I didn't know. He hesitated, then met her gaze. I didn't know you'd end up being the person who made me feel like maybe life could be good again. Her eyes softened in a way that made his chest ache. Lily tugged at his sleeve then, holding up her sketch pad. Daddy, I drew the new center. Look, Miss Emma, you're in it too. Emma knelt to see the drawing. It was crude, with crooked walls and mismatched windows, but there were bright flowers out front, and 2 smiling stick figures, one tall, one shorter, standing beside a little girl with a crown. That's beautiful, Lily, Emma said. I think you might have captured the most important part. As the ceremony began, Noah found himself standing beside Emma in front of the small crowd. Someone handed him a shovel with a gold ribbon tied around it. Together, they pressed the blades into the earth, turning the first pieces of soil. Cameras clicked, people clapped, and for the first time in a long while, Noah felt like he was standing in the middle of a beginning, not an ending. Later, when the crowd started to disperse, Emma touched his arm. When this place opens, she said, I want you here not just as a parent. I want you to work here, help run the programs. You've got a way of making people see the heart of things." Noah blinked. "Are you serious?" "Completely," she said with a small smile. "Besides, you've already proven you can win over a stubborn boardroom. I think you can handle a few dozen kids." He laughed, the sound surprising even himself. "I'd like that." As they walked back to their cars, Lily skipping ahead, Noah glanced at Emma, the winter sun caught in her hair, and he realized something. She wasn't just part of this story. She was part of his life now, in a way that felt steady, inevitable. Sometimes beginnings came disguised as fights on porches, boardroom speeches, and broken crayons. Sometimes they came disguised as people you never expected to stay. And sometimes, if you were lucky, they stayed anyway. If you enjoyed this story and want more heartfelt tales like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter.